Hey, good Wednesday evening, everybody. I am not Scotty Powell, but this is the Carolina Weather Group discussion for March 2nd, 2016. It is hard to believe we're already in March. It feels like we just went through January, just went through February, and time is flying by. It's already spring break for a lot of colleges. KITT ends or starts your spring break, what, 2 days from now or something like that?
Yeah, it starts on Friday for me.
Yeah, so everyone's looking forward to that. We're reminiscing on March 2nd, 2012 today across Kentucky and Tennessee. We had a big tornado outbreak on that date many years ago. This is the anniversary of the tornadoes in Illinois as well, so we're remembering those in addition today, and we've got an appropriate topic to discuss tonight in relation to severe weather. So first off, we're going to run around the panel and see what's going on in the world of weather, in the world of everyone's lives. We'll let Peter introduce himself first here, since he's all the way up north, and I know it's cold and snowy and probably, pretty depressing up there, like it usually is in the winter. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Go ahead first.
I'm so ready for the warm weather, but it's been kind of a roller coaster ride the past few days. I mean, we've been up and down, and we could be looking at more snow, maybe on Friday, a couple inches, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes. And then we could be talking 70s next week. So it's typical March weather. It's going to be that kind of a fun spring so far. So, yeah, nothing else going on.
We went from 69 here yesterday to 36 degrees colder this afternoon. Our color scheme on our map was almost off the chart. So, note to self, I need to edit that. But, James, you're probably feeling around the same in Charlotte. It's a little bit cooler. Not, I guess, 100% colder, but it's a little bit.
It's definitely cooler than it was after that front came through yesterday. We're watching those severe storms. I think we shared on our page some of the activity from our friends down in Georgia and on the Alabama line. But to Peter's point about the warm temperatures, I'm actually going on a business trip next week, and I'll be hitting Rochester and Binghamton, New York. So I'm happy to know that it won't be freezing.
But it may be freezing here when we get close to Friday into Saturday. A little clipper system starts diving down. Shay, you guys are still in the nice sunny beaches of Charleston, South Carolina. How's everything going down there?
Oh, we're doing great. We've had great last few days, spring-like weather, mid-70s. It's been wonderful. Of course, the southerly winds that we had a surprisingly strong sea breeze on Monday, kind of backed off on Tuesday, but those cool water temps off the cooler shelf waters definitely keeping things a little chilly along the beaches. Water temps around 55, 56, and couldn't ask for better right now this time of the year. Things really didn't cool down that much today. We were still up in the upper 60s, and so we won't get a cool down quite like you guys will up in the Piedmont areas and up into Virginia. But yeah, we're doing great here.
And Jay, of course, is Weather Flow and Wind Alert. We had a great show last week talking about all that and everything your company offers. And I saw one of my friends from UNCC got one of your new phone weather stations the other day. I saw him post a Snapchat of that, testing it out. So he was excited to test that out. So.
Oh, that's great. Snapchatting, huh? Yeah, I think Rob Fowler here did a Snapchat forecast. Kind of funny, but yeah, the new weather meter, and we also have the wind meter too. So, yeah, it's great. It's a great thing. It does on-site reports and gives you just about any piece of information you want.
And I think we have Scotty back. Scotty is not hosting as usual because he is, I guess you could say, on vacation. What are you guys calling this officially?
Assignment. We're on assignment.
Okay, Scotty's out at the Tornado Summit in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, we're out here in Oklahoma City. Beautiful day today. Some wind howling at about 20 to 25 miles per hour. So, besides that, we've had some thunderstorms earlier this. We got to do a little storm chasing. We got to see some awesome cloud structure and some helical to dime-sized hail and lightning, but no tornadoes, and that was okay.
Well, Scotty's out there. Trust me, he's trying. But
out here,
you still have us? You're kind of cutting in and out, buddy.
I got you. Can you got me.
Yeah, you're kind of going in and out. We got you every once in a
No.
while.
Y'all go on.
Go on without me. Famous last words, Scotty Powell.
At least it's not when he's going tornado chasing he says those. So finally, we'll bring in KITT and let everyone know what's going on at UNC Charlotte. It's not too much longer now, KITT, before we start off Charlotte Weatherfest again. That's going to be in, 2 weeks now, a week and a half, I guess?
Yeah, that's going to be 2.5 weeks. March 19th, Charlotte Weatherfest, the second annual edition. Will be here at UNC Charlotte, in and around McHenry. It's coming together pretty well. Cody's been getting all the guests together. We've finally got everybody in their positions. Everybody knows what they're doing, what they need to do. This year we're adding on sort of a poster display thing. A lot of the meteorology department students a few of them have put together a poster on a specific bit of weather. We've got a tornado one, hurricanes. All of those are being made, and they all already look really great. And we are really excited to add this one in this year and see how it goes for the rest of it. As far as weather, it has been sunny and kind of chilly today. I saw this one cloud formation. I couldn't quite get a picture of it, but it looked like a praying mantis. It was just off on the horizon, and I was on the road, and it got behind the trees before I could get to a stoplight to grab a picture of it. So I'll just remember it for my own self. But with that, I'll go ahead and bring in Mike Wolfinbarger. Correct me if I said your name wrong there. He works with Weather Decisions Technologies on the OU Research Campus in Norman, Oklahoma. I met him back at the American Meteorological Association conference in New Orleans, Louisiana, back in January, and also had the pleasure of listening to his presentation on what is new with RadarScope, an app created by the Weather Decisions Technology company. So, Mike, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, KITT. Well, you did a pretty good job of covering the basics. I lead the mobile development team here at WDT. I've been here about 4 years. Prior to that, I spent 18 years with the Oklahoma Mesonet as part of the University of Oklahoma. Led the software development and computer operations teams there while we built and deployed the Oklahoma Mesonet in the early days and developed the computing infrastructure and visualization tools and websites and things that make up its infrastructure today. So it's kind of my background in weather. Before that, I was a student at OU in electrical engineering.
Well, very cool. So I guess we'll go ahead and start off with just sort of asking how Weather Decisions Technologies got started. And like I've said, a lot of us use RadarScope on our phones. It's an amazing app, especially when storm chasing. You can get it on your phone and see so many different parameters. So how did WDT get started, and what other programs and products do they do? Okay,
well, WDT started in the year 2000. We were actually an OU startup company, so WDT's initial launch was based on some technology that we licensed out of the university. Some of that was stuff that I was developing at the time for the Oklahoma Mesonet and for our OK First program for emergency managers over there, and there was websites and visualization tools for radar data, surface observations, and things like that. So that was one of the technologies that WDT launched with. And the other one that came out of the university was technology from the Center for the Analysis and Prediction of Storms. That was their forecast modeling, and I know the name of it, and it just floated right out of my head. The ARCS model, that's what it was called back then. A lot of the innovations and things that came along in that model have since been worked into other forecasting models that have come along. So I wasn't one of the founders or initial employees to come out and start with WDT, but I did have some involvement with getting the company off the ground, licensing some of the technologies out of OU, and helping them get started as a private company. Our founders include Mike Iltz, who's AMS fellow and former associate director of the National Severe Storms Lab. J.T. Johnson, who was one of the original developers of the WDSS system, with the decision support system developed in NSSL. He's our chief technology officer, and I think there were a total of about 5 or 6 founders that came out of combination of university and NOAA positions here in Norman to start the company. My own path, I was at the Climate Survey and the Oklahoma Mesonet, as I mentioned, for about 18 years. In addition to the software that we had developed there for radar and data visualization that WDT licensed out, we continued to develop things over the years. When Apple released the iPhone SDK, and I guess it was 2008, there was a group of 3 of us at OCS that started developing that, adapted some of the software we'd written for Macintosh and Windows platforms to run on the iPhone. Looked for ways to bring that product. When we had a prototype, we were looking for ways to bring that out to a bigger audience. And the easiest path to that was to license that technology out from OU and start a business. So we started our own company called Base Velocity. That was around, we did that for about just almost 4 years, about 3.5. It was a moonlighting project. It was a nights and weekends kind of thing. We reached the point where it was getting to be too big to do that, and a real job too, but not big enough that it was going to be our sole real job. About the same time, WDT was looking to make a bigger play kind of in the mobile app development space with their products. They had a alerting system they were working on for mobile apps and some other things. So they needed a mobile development team that could help them achieve their goals, and we needed a private company with a little bit of stability and funding that could be a good home for RadarScope. So that's when we, those of us who started the RadarScope development, came over to WDT and joined them full time. So we've been here about 4 years now.
So, Mike, are RadarScope and WDT separate companies now, or is it a subsidiary of WDT?
WDT acquired our business in 2012, so we're all one happy family now. Some of the App Store listings still list us as a separate company, but that's just stubbornness on Apple's part and getting them to change names of things.
And
we've been officially part of WDT since I think it was February of 2012. So about half of RadarScope's life now has actually been WDT, and probably some of the more interesting things that we've been able to do with the app we've done here.
WDT also runs their weather radio app, and I highly recommend that one as well. So.
Yes, thank you. Yes, they had developed an early version of that prior to my arrival here, and prior to me bringing in the RadarScope team to do mobile development. Our first big task at WDT was we did pretty much a ground-up rewrite of weather radio on iOS. The first version didn't quite have the quality and stability that they wanted, so we rewrote that in about 3 months' time and got it out for that first storm season. Then ported the app to Android and brought it over there too.
So when RadarScope 1.0 came along, what did it look like? Was it very, similar to what we see today? Was it a radar interface totally, level 2 data, or is it really morphed now into something that it wasn't in version 1.0?
Well, it's come a long way over those 7, 8 years. The first release did just basic level 3 products. We had tilt 1 of reflectivity and tilt 1 of the base velocity product. You could toggle between the two. Now this was at a time before the level 3 product suite had full 8-bit, higher resolution reflectivities and velocities. So these were still 4-bit products. So you had a 16-color scale. This was before they'd gone to super resolution and enhanced resolution products. So the resolution and quality of the image wasn't what it is today. We didn't have a looping feature in version 1.0. That was something we had to add later. Our goal when we realized we were going to make a real product out of it, so we tried to sell, one of our goals was to hit the iOS App Store as soon as we could after launch, and I think the App Store launched mid-July, and we were the 16th paid weather app for the iPhone, and we launched late August. I think it was like the last week of August when we launched our app. So there were a few things missing, like animation loops that we thought were important, but that we just didn't have time to do. One of the things that I think has been great about the app is that, in spite of all the features we've added over the years, the basics still work pretty much the same way. We were actually discussing that this afternoon, that when you open RadarScope and use it, if what you want is reflectivity at the lowest tilt or velocity at the lowest tilt, you pretty much use those features the same way today that you did then. So as the app has grown in terms of features and capabilities, the things that most people use most of the time are still easy to get to.
Go ahead, Kit, sorry.
One of the things on the more recent updates that I got, it has the different tilt scrubber that you can just hold down and go to the different ones pretty quickly. Where did that idea come from? I really enjoy that one.
A lot of our ideas like that come from feedback we get from people that use the app and things they want to do with it. And we'd had people asking about ways to quickly look up a tilt or down a tilt, or quickly toggle between reflectivity and velocity, things like that. And we'd experimented with some other ways of doing it. One of the things we tried at one point were multi-touch gestures. So swipe left with 2 fingers or swipe up with 2 fingers to change the tilt. And while that worked, it didn't turn out to be a great user experience. We actually just used that ourselves for several weeks and finally decided that it was just too error prone in terms of, did I get 1 finger down on the screen or 2 before I started to swipe? And since panning with 1 finger scrolls the map, you didn't always get what you wanted. So that was our initial idea for quick product switching, and we set that one aside for a while. And I guess the tilt scrubbing we've got now really kind of grew out of the loop scrubber that we did, where you touch and hold the play button, and then you can slide back and forth through the frames in an animation loop. We said, well, that worked pretty well. Let's do something similar for product selection.
And you guys, about 2 years ago now, I think you guys added Precip Detection.
That sounds about right. It was maybe 3, but I think it was a couple of years ago. That's a product that it's based on surface data that WDT's got in-house, so it's a combination of those 2 things, and some products that they were already creating for their radar mosaics. So we took that technology that WDT had, they were using for other things, and combined it with the single site products we had to make something gives you a pretty good idea of whether you're seeing snow or rain or something in between.
And over the years, I know we've always heard the request for a national radar mosaic. Is there any plans in the future to eventually maybe roll that out?
It's one of the things that's perpetually on the roadmap, and I'm sure we'll do it one of these days. Whenever we sit down and start brainstorming and prioritizing features for the next release, it's always one we talk about. First and foremost, we want RadarScope to be a great app for looking at single-site products, and we always seem to have more things we can do in that area to make that a better experience or a richer experience. So far we focused on that, but there's certainly value in being able to see the bigger picture, even if it's at a lower resolution. So I could see us doing that at some point.
One of the things I've wondered about over the years is NMD icons, so it's like TVS signatures and hail icons and stuff like that. Is there any thoughts on that?
There is, and we've done some work on that. It didn't make the cut for RadarScope 3, but it'll be along some point, I hope in the not too distant future.
Kit or James, I think had a question.
Yeah, I was actually curious, going back to the development, before we get too far away from that, when you first rolled this out, where did you think this was going to go? Did you think this was going to live in academia? Did you think it was going to live in broadcast, National Weather Service, all of the above? And how do you react to the way it's taken off?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the early days of the iPhone, I guess 2007 when they first introduced it, but they didn't have an app store and didn't have an SDK. We knew enough about the architecture of the iPhone and the software running on it that we felt like this product was possible if they did open it up to development. And so we had a year where we were saying, if they'll just give us an SDK, we think we could do something really cool. We got on their development program, I guess, in March of 2008, had a somewhat functional prototype by May. our original goal was really to build an app that we wanted to use. We knew that, you know, we'd been developing software that did basically the same kinds of things on PC and Macintosh computers for a long time, and we knew that the idea of putting that in your pocket or putting that in a vehicle with a storm spotter was a pretty cool thing to have. So in a sense, we were developing a product for ourselves and for the constituents that we were serving with the Oklahoma Mesonet and with our OK First program for emergency managers. We wanted emergency management folks and public safety folks and storm spotters and forecasters to have a tool that could give them good visualization of radar, load quickly, even if they're in a mobile environment. And so that's what we set out to develop. It became clear at some point along the way, I wanted to develop a product that would be stable from a funding point of view from the beginning. So you say, well, you can give it away, but then if it becomes too successful, you may have a sustainability problem. We started out in the early days just pointing to NOAA's public data feeds on the web, but they're known to have issues when they get bogged down with lots of people using them during severe weather outbreaks. So a large part of the decision to make it a commercial product was, let's charge just enough money that if it does take off and it is successful, we can afford to set up our own data feeds when it's time to do that and really expand and build on the product. And so partnering with WDT, I think after the second, I think we got about a year and a half or 2 years in when we added our own data feed that was hosted by WDT, actually before WDT acquired us. The early days of discussing licensing and setting up a business out of it with OU, they asked me how many copies of RadarScope we thought we'd sell, and I said, well, maybe we'll sell 1,000 copies of it, and I think we did that in the first 4 days. So it's exceeded our expectations. I certainly expected it to be something that would be used within the meteorology community, but I think, you know, there's a couple of things that happened. One, at that point, it was still unclear that the iPhone or Android phones were going to be something that everyone had in the U.S., and now we got like 75–80% market penetration. If you own a cell phone, it's probably a smartphone. I'm not sure anybody saw that happening as fast as it did. And one of the things that happened is that as meteorologists got the product and people that were really weather enthusiasts got the product, they started to sell it to other people and tell it to, you know, show it to other people. So I think one of the great things about RadarScope is that for a $10 app, it's something that really represents the field of meteorology that so many people are passionate about and excited about, and it's an opportunity to share it with your family and your friends and coworkers and things like that. So we really saw it take off in the early days, I think primarily because of that.
Is there a number of how many apps you guys have sold now?
Several 100,000. I don't have an exact number because I haven't looked in a while. We have several 100,000 users on RadarScope. Tens of thousands of subscribers on our subscription package that we do inside the app now.
Yeah, I just pulled up the Android version on my phone. I have the subscription, and it says there's 50,000 downloads on that.
Yeah, it sounds about right on
Android.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. By the way, the last time I looked.
And I think most people
about 3 years now, maybe 4, not quite 4. iPhone's been out since 2008, so iPhone's bigger than that. We still see more downloads on iOS than Android, although Android is growing. It increases every year and kind of closes the gap, but it's still, most of the time it's a 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 ratio these days.
And I think most people probably watching tonight have seen the app or maybe even used the app, but in case anybody's not familiar, I do have a screen share up. This is just of the Android version, just to kind of give people an idea of what this looked like. I'm curious a little bit. You mentioned it briefly, kind of the relationship with the feeds, with the National Weather Service, with the radars. Can you speak a little bit to that? What's been their reaction? What's that relationship like? Because I guess at the end of the day, you know, their radars are the ones still scanning this. So were they open to a product like this?
Well, it's one of those situations where we didn't ask permission because there were other software products out there that were using the same feeds, like Gibson Ridge products and some of those. Fortunately, we didn't have to ask forgiveness either. We had a lot of folks in the Weather Service that were early customers and loved the app. Certainly a lot of people within the weather community here at OU that just, you know, knew we were working on it or heard about it word of mouth. So the relationship with the Weather Service has been fantastic. I mean, we've worked closely with some of those folks in various capacities for years here in Oklahoma, and building a product that would benefit those folks so that they can see what's happening with the weather if they're not on duty, so that they can have a quick way to pull something up and look at it in their pocket wherever they happen to be, has been great. Within the last year or two now, I believe the Weather Service now has iPads in most forecast offices that have RadarScope on it. So.
I know I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I know broadcasters love it as well. There was an incident here just last week where there was a tornado-warned cell, and so many of the mosaics in the feeds that the TV stations were getting were having such a hard time finding it. And I remember one meteorologist at one point finally just said, "Well, I found it here on my phone on RadarScope."
Yeah.
So you've got fans in all sorts of fields.
Well, that's great. That was also one of the areas where we saw it, you know, really take off. Is that meteorologists in particular in the TV space have really embraced social media, Twitter primarily, Facebook to some extent too, to get, you know, as another channel to communicate with their viewers and their constituents. And so some of the features that we put in RadarScope over the years have been watching how those people use it and trying to make it easier. In the early days, we'd see people taking screenshots on their iPhone, import that screenshot into a drawing app, annotate it, and then go over to their Twitter app and post it. And so that's how we ended up doing the drawing features and then the sharing features to share directly to Twitter. So instead of having to jump around 3 different apps to accomplish that, you could do it in one. So some of those features like that came about because we've seen those people use it and try to come up with ways to make it easier. Some of the screen mirroring and sharing stuff we're doing with AirPlay, with the iPad, works best with the iPad. You can do it with the iPhone as well. With AirPlay to an Apple TV, we developed a lot of those features in part from seeing folks like James Spann in the Birmingham market, other people put RadarScope on the air. The one that really caught our attention with that, I believe it was in 2011 when they had the big outbreak of storms there in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and those areas, and James, there was some issue with their on-air system, and so he pulled out his MacBook and fired up the app and just said, "We're going to use this. You know, we've used this until we can get our other back," and he regularly uses it on the air now. So some of the features we put in have been to make things like that easier for folks to do.
Mike, that actually brings up a good question. I noticed that there's RadarScope. There's also weather radio. Are you a part of that as well, and how does that feed in with RadarScope?
Yes, Weather Radio is an app that WDT started developing before we came on board. So they had a group of people developing the first version of that. They had a good, solid, really the key to that app, to making it great, is a solid infrastructure on the back end for you know, the database that keeps track of who has the app and what locations are they interested in and what type of alerts do they want to get, and they can get those out in a timely fashion. So they had a great back-end infrastructure, but the app itself was somewhat lacking. And so we came on board in part to give RadarScope a home and continue to develop it, but also in large part to rework the Weather Radio app and make it a better piece of software. So the first 3 or 4 months we were here was primarily rewriting the Weather Radio app for iOS from the ground up and making that a great product. And since we've been here, we've Yeah, I mentioned RadarScopes and the hundreds of thousands of users. Weather radios, similar, but we've also licensed that technology out to other folks. So there's a lot of TV station apps out there that have alerting as a component, with different parts of the U.S. that use our alerting engine and that part of the weather radio app embedded in there. So that number of people with those products on their phones number in the millions now. So typical severe weather outbreak will send millions of alerts to cell phones to let people know about tornado watches and thunderstorm warnings and things of that sort.
Is that an automated system?
Yes, yes. That's completely automated. We get the full suite of NOAA products over a NOAA port feed. It comes straight into our data center, gets run through. Those get matched up with a database of known devices and locations that are being monitored and which alerts are needed for which device, and then sent out. Our average turnaround time is for any alert that comes in is less than 30 seconds to get it out to everybody. So that's really a fantastic product. There are tons of weather apps out there that do alerting, but I think, in my opinion at least, having compared a lot of them and put multiple products on my phone to watch how the alerts come through and how reliable they are, how fast and how accurate they are, I believe we've got a very compelling product there. It tends to outdo the other ones most of the time. One of the things weather radio does is it doesn't just warn based on a county or proximity to an office or something like that. It's a polygon-based system. So if the locations, your current location or one of the locations you've chosen to monitor, are within the defined polygon for that warning, you'll get a push notification. And if you're not within the defined polygon, you don't. And most other systems aren't that precise in terms of how they work. The other thing we've added to weather radio, I guess it's been not quite 2 years ago, is lightning alerting. So also with if you get a lightning strike within, I believe it's 8 miles is how it's currently set up of your location, you'll get a push notification. And that system's absolutely fantastic. That's an in-app purchase add-on to the basic weather radio product. I believe it's $5 a year. And for that, you can, we've had several customers tell us that I'll see a flash of lightning, get the alert, and then hear the thunder. So we think we've got a great system there.
Now, one thing that you were sort of hinting at earlier on how people would use it, and you'd see them using it in a particular way, and you'd add that into the new features. Is there any other way that users can get in contact with y'all to make suggestions or ask questions about it?
Absolutely. We have a support email account that's monitored all the time. We've got support staff that's taking questions and helping people solve problems and taking feature requests at support@wdtinc.com. That email address is actually inside the app. If you go to the app settings, and it's either labeled help or support. That's a great way to get in contact with us if you've got something you've got a problem with or some ideas you want to share. We have our Twitter account online. It's RadarScope. There are several of us that watch that on a regular basis. We have a Facebook group, RadarScope Users Group, that's fairly active. We've got several thousand members on it. So there's lots of ways to give us feedback and talk to us about the product and tell us what you like and tell us what you don't like.
One thing I like about the Facebook group is there's a couple of rules on the side of the page about just how to use the group, and I feel like a lot of the internet could learn from some of those rules.
Yeah, it's once you get people online in a big group, sometimes it gets a little rowdy. So our goal with that forum is to be able to answer questions about the product, whether you're an expert or a new user. You don't. So there's going to be a mix of people in there. Some of them that have been using the product for years, and then a few people that just bought it. Maybe they're not a meteorologist or a weather expert, but they live someplace like Oklahoma or Arkansas or Alabama, and they're worried about the weather and they want to know more about it. So we want it to be a friendly place where people feel welcome to come and ask dumb questions, because there really aren't any dumb questions. So that's one of the things we try to maintain. And most of the folks that do our support email, a large number of them are either meteorologists or meteorology students that are about to be meteorologists. they use the app, they love the app, and they understand and love the weather. So
you guys have been incredibly good about answering every question in there. And from an outsider standpoint, you know, I mean, I'm a user of the app, but it's nice to see that from a company instead of just some other groups on Facebook that just seem to throw people down when they ask dumb questions. So thanks for doing that. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We've got a great group of people. Some of those folks that are on the forum are on the development team. Some of them are on our support team, and some of them are folks that work here and just, you know, that's not their primary job, but they love the product and they love the weather and they want to help out. So some of those guys are the group of people that keep our server infrastructure running, or work in our content team or various other places. So it's a great, you know, it's a great product to have if you're in a company where almost everybody's pursuing a career that has to do with the weather and is doing that because they love what they do. So the people that are supporting it love to help support it because they love to talk about this stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about RadarScope 3.0 because that's our newest version that's debuting now and kind of rolling out into the beta stage. I'm a lucky early beta tester, so I'll hold this up to my camera real quick. Look at dual panels. That's the biggest thing, I think, in RadarScope 3.0. But talk a little bit about, you know, the new version, some of the exciting things that people are going to see when it rolls out in the fully released version to both app stores.
Sure. We're looking to roll Android and iOS version 3.0 out this month. Not exactly sure how soon, but we're getting there. As soon as we got the worst of the bugs stomped out, it seems to be stable and happy. On the iOS side, we started a project last summer to, you know, the code base for that app was started in 2008, and some of that little parts of it were licensed from code we developed at OU even longer ago than that. So some of it was getting a little long in the tooth. And Apple's got a new programming language they debuted a couple of years ago called Swift. So one of the things that we started last summer was a rewrite of the core parts of RadarScope to convert from Objective-C to Swift to bring it up to date with some of the modern features of iOS. And that project ended up going a little faster than we thought. I originally thought that's something that might be take a couple of years before we were ready to put that in a shipping product, but it moved along pretty quick, so we decided to really focus on that in the fall and say, let's just make that the basis for version 3. One of the things that allowed us to do is roll out the dual pane feature, I think, sooner than we would have otherwise. So the dual pane feature will be in version 3. That's part of the Pro package, so it's part of our $10 a year subscription package to get the Pro tool. We've added some other things we've added along the way. We've got there are a couple of radars in South Korea that we've added. There are a few other things here and there. We've really redone the whole UI, and while it still looks and feels like RadarScope, it's got a few new things in there, and we've improved some of the detail views when you go and drill down and say, well, look at the text of a warning. And we also embed a small map there too, so you can see the map and the text of the warning together if you're on a phone, something you've been able to do on the iPad but couldn't do on the phone before. But really, I guess the key thing there is almost the entire software infrastructure and the foundation of the app on iOS has been redone. On the Android side, we didn't redo so much of the low-level code, but we did redo the user interface almost completely. So we wanted something that was that looked a little more like a modern Android app using Google's material design guidelines and things like that. A lot of that code had been targeting Android 2.0 or 2.1, whichever one we launched with to start with, and now that we're up to Android 5 and Android 6, it was getting harder to do that. So as we were able to phase out support for Android 2.x and focus on newer versions, it gave us an opportunity to go back and rewrite that. So that's probably one of the kind of the key things, just as far as keeping the app healthy and fresh and making it easier to innovate going forward, is getting some newer, targeting some of the newer user interface APIs and things like that on both systems. Also in this release, we did a watch app for the Apple Watch last spring, and we made that initially available to our Pro subscribers. In version 3, we're going to roll that out to everybody, so that's no longer part of the subscription. And and then we're rolling out support for Android Wear as well. So, and that's the first time we've got Android Wear.
Yeah, I'm kind of a newbie to Android Wear and everything, but it's got me in my interest peaked because now I want a smartwatch more than I did before. But is the controllability, do you have to control the radar from your phone, or is it you can control from the watch?
Well, Android Wear and the Apple Watch are somewhat different in terms of what we can do. So start with the Apple Watch. It's not quite as flexible as some of the APIs we've got access to on Android Wear at this point, but it's all controllable from the watch. It does go through your phone to get data, so you need to have your phone within Bluetooth range. So the watch will use Bluetooth to go talk to the app on the phone and tell it what to download, and then that'll download it and pass the data back to the watch to render. So on iOS, what you don't have is a full-blown UI for like zooming and panning and really interacting with it. You've got kind of some fixed zoom levels that you can toggle between, but it gives you a good idea of what's happening. You can either see a view of the whole domain of the radar or a view around your favorite locations that you've got entered. You can switch products, so you can view velocity, reflectivity, those kind of things. And then over on Android Wear, they have opened up the graphics APIs for OpenGL and things like that, where we can actually do the full stack for rendering the radar image, and OpenGL and panning and zooming and things is there. So it's a little more flexible in terms of the ability to pinch to zoom and do some of those things. Both products will do animation and animated loops and things like that. So I think as far as the watches go, we don't really see it as a replacement for looking at a radar image on your phone, where you've got a bigger screen and a faster processor, more memory and things. But it's a good way to get just a quick glance at what's happening, so you know whether or not you need to pull out your phone. And I think that's really kind of the intent right now, and what the watches are good for.
Are there any limitations on, say, like older Android watches? Like, I know we got the Moto 360s, like I think it's Gen 1 is out. Now they're on a couple gens further. Is there any limitations on older versions?
I don't think so. I'm not quite up to speed on which version's which, to be honest, but we've been developing on the Motorola 360, and that's what we're running on right now. Doing most of our actual hardware testing outside the emulator is on the 360, and it runs very well. So I think I don't want to misspeak, but I think as far as Android Wear goes, even anything along the lines of the Motorola 360 and up should be fine. And of course, the Apple Watch, there's just been one generation of hardware. We are targeting with this release. We did one for watchOS 1.0. This release, we're targeting watchOS 2.0, and dropping the 1.0 support under the assumption that anybody that bought an Apple Watch is upgraded into watchOS 2. So if you haven't, you might want to do that before the RadarScope update comes out.
James, I think you have a question.
I do. I have a question and a request. I'll start with the request. If you guys come out with a Pebble one, I will take a jump and go out and buy the color one just for that.
All right. No immediate plans for the Pebble, but we'll keep it in mind.
Just put that somewhere on the back burner, I guess. But actually, that kind of does bring me to my question. Just kind of big picture, I was wondering if you could talk and explain a little bit the development process, because I think I'm not sure how familiar folks are with that process, but there are a lot of things that go into it, and I was wondering if you could just walk us through some of that.
Well, I could try. Are you thinking about
user experience and the time it takes to kind of really work out the bugs to make sure you come out with as good of a product as you guys did? Sure.
It is somewhat time-consuming. We do get, in fact, one of the reasons that we've introduced the subscription package that we did is we had good success for many years selling the app for a one-time download price, but we said, we want to continue to improve the app. We want to keep working on it, making it better, and to do that, we need a continued steady stream of money to pay those guys to keep working on it. So that's one of the reasons why we have the RadarScope Pro package at $10 a year now. That the people that subscribe do get extra features like lightning data and some of the more professional analysis tools and things. But because we have quite a few subscribers, everybody gets the app updated for iOS 8 and iOS 9 and Android 6.0 and Android Wear. A big part of our ability to keep improving the product and keeping up with the new hardware and the new mobile OS releases is because we have that revenue stream. We started, so if you look at the early development of RadarScope, we started and had a functional prototype that could display a basic radar image in about 6 weeks. But then we spent another, the time period from early May until late August getting a product that was ready to ship. A lot of that was pretty much nights and weekends work on the part of a couple of people. So the Apple version, the iOS version, was code written in C++ that originally came off the Mac platform, and then a bunch of code written in a language called Objective-C, which is Apple's primary programming language for iOS. And then we decided to go to Android. We were on iOS, running pretty well there, and for I guess 2 or 3 years, we had a lot of people asking us, well, why don't you bring it to Android? Shouldn't be that hard. Well, the truth is it's pretty time consuming, because while they both run OpenGL graphics and those things, totally different programming languages those. So you've got Objective-C and C++ code on iOS, but you've got Java as the programming language and environment on Android. So to do that, we actually had to bring in another partner into the business. And it was somebody that had formerly worked with us at OU, but hadn't been working with us on RadarScope, and who didn't even know Android. But he said, you know what, if you want somebody to work on this, I'm willing to learn it. And so he spent 9 months or so learning the Android platform and then porting the app, a little bit at a time, until we had enough of the functionality that we could release it. So even spinning it up from scratch was certainly an ordeal. Took a while. There's tens of thousands of lines of code in that app now, and then this time reporting it to Swift was kind of interesting too, because there's still some Objective-C and C++ in there, but almost all of the UI and the higher level features of the app have been completely rewritten in a new programming language now that's kind of focused more on the future and where we think Apple's going.
And they certainly keep you on your toes with every update they come out with.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that keeps the product fresh, there have been a couple of things. If you go back to 2008 and you look at, like I mentioned earlier, where radar data was, the resolution and quality of radar data they distributed in the Level 3 product suite has gotten better. At one point, the Weather Service started to put out the 8-bit products that were same spatial resolution, but now instead of 16 colors, you've got 256, so you can see more detail in the image. And then after we came to WDT, we said, well, that's neat, but now that they've enhanced the file format and added compression and some other things where they can do a higher bit depth, why don't we go for higher resolution too? And so that allowed us to take Level 2 data, reprocess and repackage it in a Level 3 form that we could send to the app. So that was something that we wouldn't have done on our own, but we're able to do because we were here at WDT, where they had the computing resources we needed to process the Level 2 data and get it in a form that RadarScope could consume. These days, I think we spend a lot of time. You mentioned like UI design and stuff. We do spend a lot of time thinking about that. Sometimes features that we want to add or that people ask about, we won't put in right away until we feel like we've got a good user experience for it. And the criteria for that are kind of threefold. First, we don't want to make it harder to use the features that are already there. So we don't want to take the things that people use every day and the most common features and make them harder to get to because we added new things. We don't want the app to degrade in terms of responsiveness or speed. Certainly if you're loading a super res image instead of an older base reflectivity product, that's going to take longer or require more bandwidth. But for the app doing the same things on the same device, you don't want it to get slower from one release to the next. And then we just want the user experience to be clean and smooth. We don't want you to be trying to do one thing and end up accidentally doing another. And in some ways, a touchscreen interface presents a real challenge for that because you're manipulating it with your fingers and the screen's only so big. But also in some ways, it's been interesting that what we've been able to do with it. In some ways, I think we've got a richer interface that we would have if you were just doing it on a PC because it's direct interaction with your fingertips. So there have been some interesting trade-offs with that. It's been a lot of fun.
It definitely was really nice having the quick updates because I went on my first real storm chase last week, and I had my laptop for my co-pilot. He had Gibson Ridge on the computer, but sometimes it just like wasn't getting what we wanted real quick, and I was just like, okay, look, here's my phone, take it.
Yeah, yeah.
And pull up RadarScope.
That was, you know what, we get spoiled sitting in our offices over at the Weather Center or over here today where we've got a gigabit Ethernet connection, you know, coming in on a cable into your iMac with your big screen and your fast processor. And so one of the goals of the original app, you know, that was before cellular networks started to get faster and more widespread. So most people that had a smartphone at that time were on an edge connection into, you know, second generation cellular connection. And in a lot of rural areas of Oklahoma and probably a lot of other places, it wasn't even that fast. So one of our goals in developing RadarScope is that we wanted it to be able to get a basic radar image on a really slow connection. So if you're a storm spotter on a dirt road and, you know, after dark, you can get a radar image quickly. I believe the first on a good edge connection, which was by no means guaranteed in rural Oklahoma at the time, but on a good edge connection, you could get a single reflectivity image in about 6 seconds. And when we added looping, you could get the 6 frames for the loop in about 30 seconds. And that was kind of our criteria. That's how we ended up with a 6-second loop. We said 30 seconds is long enough to wait. So, and everything we've done since then, we tried to, you know, add features, but keep the product in such a way that it still works in that kind of a scenario.
So I know we're getting close to 9 o'clock now, so I'm going to ask the guys if they've got anything else to throw out, and then we'll kind of end with another question.
I've got one for you, Mike. I know that you work on the mobile apps. Do you work on any of the other aspects of WDT, such as the IMAP interactive features or the aviation decision support, hydromet decision support, any of those other parts of weather decision technologies?
I don't work on any of those directly. In the early days of WDT, some of their web-based products used some software that I developed at OU, but most of that's obsolete and phased out now. So I'm involved in some of the meetings and discussions, you know, as one of our product managers and kind of the directions of where the company's going in general. But we do have a separate web team that does the IMAP-based products. We have an international group that does international projects that deal with aviation and lots of other things. We have a dedicated content team that's job is to get all of the various weather data and products, pull those into WDT, create new products and value-added products from those, QA and process those, and get them ready for the rest of us to actually to play out in the world. We've got a separate team of folks that just does our alerting engine. So we've got quite a few people doing different things, and my focus right now is mobile.
Yep. Anyone else?
I think I'm good.
All right.
Well, I'll go ahead and ask Joey's final question. Joey couldn't be here tonight. He was tired from moving stuff around today. But he usually asks all of our new guests this one question. We have a number of students, like middle and high school, and some teachers of those students who will watch the show. And we always ask our guests, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's wanting to get into the meteorology business, or maybe app development business in your case? What advice would you give them on how to prepare themselves?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, I've been fortunate that I've been able to work doing things and work in a field that I'm really excited about. I really like what I do, and part of the flexibility of that comes from getting a good education. So I think some folks come into meteorology not anticipating the level of mathematics involved, not anticipating the level of you know, some of the complexity of the science and the thermodynamics and the calculus and the things like that they're going to need. So you don't, you know, if you're a middle school or high school student coming in and you haven't had those things yet, even if you get to even as you're coming into college, it shouldn't scare you away from it. Just know that you're going to have to, those are hurdles you're going to have to jump if you're passionate about doing it. You really want to do it. I think the same is true in software development too. They're just there's certain level of rigor in the math and sciences that are going to be important as just fundamentals. But I also think these days in both of those fields, there are a lot of side things that can really give people an edge. There are lots of people that can write code and be good programmers. It takes more than that to be a great software developer. You need to have some communication skills. You need to have an empathy for your customer base and a knowledge about, at least a respect for the knowledge base in whatever field you're serving. You know, me, it happens to be meteorology, but there are people developing software in the medical fields or other places where the same thing applies. These days, I think a great combination is software, computers, and meteorology. The job market seems to be changing, and evolving all the time. I think there are a lot of new opportunities for meteorologists that didn't used to be there in the private sector. And I think meteorologists are really good about reinventing themselves and evolving to meet new needs, especially as new data becomes available. So they're both fields that are a whole lot of fun to work in. I'm really happy to be doing software in the meteorology space because there's just so many things that we can do with a personal computing device that almost anything you can do with a PC or a laptop or a phone, I've got a good reason why I need that feature in a meteorology app, whether it's GPS or internet connectivity or high-end 3D graphics. There's something you can do with it. So they're both great fields to pursue, and they're a whole lot of fun when you put them together.
First off, I just want to say that apparently C++ class was slightly important because I could have designed RadarScope off of it, so I should have trusted that class a little bit more than I did as an undergrad at UNCC. Granted, if it was taught maybe in a meteorology path, I would have. But it's amazing to see how the RadarScope has really grown, over the past several years and still continues to grow, Mike.
Well, thanks. I didn't imagine when we started it that it was something that was going to be kind of one of my primary things I focused on for almost a decade of my working life. But it's been really fun that we've been able to do that. We spent a lot of years. Most of the guys that are involved with RadarScope with me now also worked with me over at the Mesonet. So we spent a lot of years developing software that was used by several hundred people that were emergency managers or things like that, and to go to a product that's now serving several 100,000 people has been a lot of fun. It's allowed us to work more closely with people in different aspects of meteorology, work more with some of the scientists and the forecasters and things like that, and that's been a lot of fun. Get involved with some of the TV folks, get to know some of the people in the media space, and that's been pretty fun. So it's been pretty neat to be able to do. It's a very it's nice to develop software for such an enthusiastic customer base.
I know that there was a great bit of enthusiasm at the AMS conference when it was announced that 3.0 was coming out in dual screens. As soon as that image of two screens came up on the projector, there was just this whole crowd of excitement.
Yeah, there was an audible gasp. That was kind of fun. So it's a feature that we wanted to put in the app since the iPad came out. So we're really excited to finally get it out the door.
I'm just waiting for that dual pane download to come to my phone.
Well, look for it this month. Should be hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
I'm looking for it.
It's right here on Twitter during outbreaks, and people being like, "Ooh, I want that." So, Mike, tell people how they can get in contact with you.
One thing they need to get ready, if they don't have a RadarScope Pro subscription, now's a good time to subscribe so that they'll be ready when the dual pane feature is released.
Tell people how they can get in touch with you and how they can get more information about RadarScope if they're interested.
You can send an email to our support team, support@wdtinc.com. You can find RadarScope on Twitter. I read that account every day. You can find me on Twitter if you look just ever so slightly harder at JM Wolfinbarger. Email us, post on Facebook, send us a message on Twitter. Lots of ways to get in touch with us, and we follow them all. So.
All right. Sounds great. Well, we appreciate you joining us tonight and giving us some insight into the fantastic world of RadarScope. And are you guys still selling the RadarScope T-shirts, or is that kind of come and go on?
We did that for a while before Christmas and at AMS and had some success with it. We're not doing it right now, but I suspect we will do it again at some point.
There's going to have to be a dual panel screen now on that.
You're right. I've got an idea for a feature that I haven't figured out how to implement yet, but where you could take the screenshot in RadarScope and instead of like posting to Twitter or Facebook, you just order it on a shirt. But we haven't quite figured out how to build that yet. So.
Vistaprint or Zazzle or someone I'm sure will come up with it. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Mike. Thank you very much. We'll hopefully get you back on here sometime.
Sure. Happy to do it anytime. Thanks for having me.
Oh, RadarScope 4.0.
Alrighty, this has been the weekly Carolina Weather Group discussion for March 2nd, 2016. As always, you can watch the rebroadcast on YouTube anytime after this broadcast ends tonight, and you can get it in podcast form. There's too many different cast forms of this show to do it, and that'll be up soon once I get it downloaded, converted, and uploaded in the next couple of days. So, any final thoughts from you guys?
Well, I can give a preview of the next couple of weeks. Next week we've got the Almanac Accuracy show. We're talking about the Farmer's Almanac and how credible or incredible it can be. And then we've got Mike Smith coming up in a couple of weeks with Applied Meteorology, and Chaser Stories coming up towards the end of March. And then, of course, we've got April for severe weather months coming, so we can all look forward to that.
Boy, it's really that time again. I remember doing severe weather month last week, or last year. Wow.
Well, you were doing it last week.
Well, yes, I mean, we were doing it last week. But you get my point, so... Anyway. Alrighty, guys. We'll sign off for this edition and see you all next week.